Welcome to From Separation to Settlement, a family law podcast.
Hello and welcome to From Separation to Settlement, a podcast about navigating the legal and emotional journey through family law. I am your host, Kevin Rosenquist, and I'm joined by Jeff Hale, litigation partner at Kroener Hale Law Firm. Jeff has dedicated his career to guiding families through divorce, custody, and other complex legal challenges with compassion and clear, honest advice. In our first episode here, we're going to get to know Jeff, his background, and his approach to family law, and what listeners can expect from our podcast moving forward. Jeff, it's so good to have you here. Thanks for being here.
Hey, Kevin, thanks for welcoming me. It's a great opportunity, and we're happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to chat with you. You've got a very interesting background. So could you start by just telling us a little about your background and what inspired you to focus specifically on family law?
Yeah, I'm a veteran of the United States Navy, and upon wrapping up my enlistment, I attended undergraduate at the University of Virginia, College of Wise, and then ultimately ended up in Northern Kentucky at the Salmon P. Chase Law School. I would say I didn't really just start out to get into family law. There was no aha moment that made me want to focus on that. Straight out of law school, a friend of mine and myself opened up our own office. And with that, you kind of do what you have to do to survive. And I got my first divorce case. And as I worked that case up and went through it, I found out that I'm pretty good at listening to people and then helping them sort through the broken pieces and trying to put something back together for a new beginning. And so fast forward 20 years later, and here I am, and now I'm in this family law niche.
That's great. Well, thank you for your service, first of all. And that there's an emotional component to that, right? To the divorce law, where you do have to have a level of empathy and compassion. You have to in all areas of law, I'm sure, but there's something different about family law, I would think, in that respect.
There is. The biggest thing is that people want to be heard.
Right.
So, and most of the time when I have a prospective client come into the office, you can immediately tell that they want to tell their story. So my initial approach is I want to sit down with you. We're going to sit down face to face. I'm going to let this individual talk about their situation, about what's going on, what brought them into my office. And I actively listen. I make it a point to take very little notes on this first go around because I don't want to distract from them getting their story out, for them getting it off their chest.
Right.
And so at that point, once that story's out, then we can begin to walk back through the details of that, and it allows them to get that relief, and then they can begin to talk about what the details are and what's brought them into my office.
So what led you to create our podcast here, From Separation to Settlement? How do you hope it will help people who are facing these particularly tough family transitions?
Well, so I occasionally listen to podcasts. I occasionally watch them on YouTube or whatever podcast, I guess, platform is out there. And really, it's just there's always a series. It's almost like a set series of questions that everyone asks when they first come into my office. And I just thought, I didn't see a lot of family law, a lot of divorce and custody podcasts out there, or at least that didn't seem to answer really just basic questions. And so I thought that this would be a great opportunity. And if it helps somebody with their initial questions, that then gives them more questions and more detailed questions to ask when they come in, not even to my office, if they go to another office, just they have more detailed questions, and it'll help speed up the process, and they don't feel like they're just spinning their wheels. So they walk in with some answers, and they can get more detailed as they go on.
Yeah, for anybody who's never been through it, you're probably, all you really know about it is either stuff you've seen friends and family go through or something you've seen on TV and in movies, so you don't really have an idea of really how the divorce process works, especially when you have assets and kids and all that stuff, so that it can be very complex and maybe even feel overwhelming for a lot of people. How do you approach guiding your clients through this overwhelming, difficult process?
So, Kevin, it's definitely overwhelming. That's probably the most common statement that I hear is just how overwhelming it is, because you're taking a family, and inside this family, there have been roles for however long they've been married. One role has been maybe the main care provider. Role has been the breadwinner. So when you are taking that apart, it's overwhelming to think that now you're going to have to assume both roles. You're going to have to be, in some instances, you have to be both parents to the children. You have to be the provider for the children, and it can be very overwhelming. So the first thing that I do is I bring them in, and like I said, I listen to them. I want you to tell your story. I want all of that off your chest, put it all on the table, and for lack of a better term, lay it on the table and let's begin to pick through it so we can start categorizing things. So I personally have, and at Kroener Hale, we have created a format that we create a roadmap. We refer to it as our divorce or our custody roadmap. And basically what that is as we're going through the details, we get an idea of what it is this person is hoping to accomplish. So you put that at the very end. That's your destination, the very end. This is what I want to accomplish. And then as you go through the details, you begin to fill in the starting point, and you have the starting point and you begin to fill in the middle. And that's really the roadmap. And that person leaves our office with a tactile road plan. Now, that plan can change based on circumstances, based on facts that may arise later in the case. But when they leave there, they have a legitimate plan, and they feel that, number one, they've been heard, and number two, I have something in place that I can now look at and say, okay, this is where I'm at in the steps that we talked about. And this is where, this is how many more steps I have left to accomplish.
And can you talk about why working with a local attorney, especially one familiar with county courts, is so important in family law cases?
So I would honestly say the first and foremost, the most important thing in your attorney is that they listen to you and that you trust them. You absolutely have to trust them. Now, it is important that you, in my opinion, that you have a local attorney, because in Ohio, we have many, many counties. Now, there are state laws, but every single county in Ohio has local rules for each courthouse. Local rules for divorce court, local rules for criminal court, for probate court, for juvenile court. They each have their own little packet of rules that are in addition to the state laws. So it's important to have a local attorney, or at least somebody that practices a lot within that county, because they need to know these local rules, because not knowing them can be very detrimental to your case. They set deadlines, they set timelines for when you need to turn over exhibits, timelines for when you need to disclose expert witnesses to the opposing side. So there's a lot of rules in there that just knowing the state laws are not going to help you. And it can torpedo your case not knowing those.
Yeah, definitely. That makes a lot of sense. And you guys, at Kroener Hale, really emphasize the personal attention and strong communication. You mentioned that personal attention. When you think about how you handle that part of the client-attorney relationship, how does that show up for your clients, that strong communication and personal attention?
So obviously the personal attention starts from the minute, even before they've hired us, from the minute they step in the door and they want to tell their story. So, I found that letting them talk, getting that off their chest, you're going to be able to better communicate with them, because you understand where they're coming from. You understand what their greatest fear is during this process, and you understand what their most important aspect up during this process is going to be, whether that's children or financial or property or the debts that's been acquired. Those are all things that you can sit down and you start to pull apart as you're listening to that story. And then communication, 9 out of 10 times, you can put someone at ease just simply by communicating.
Right.
All you have to do is, it can be a simple email. Just, if I get, it can be an email, a text, a quick phone call. Even if I don't have any new information for a client, I make it a point to, at least every 2 weeks, I'll send out an email, say, hey, I just wanted to check in, see if anything has changed in your situation. And it's just that simple thing that lets them know, what, my attorney's thinking about me. He's looked at my case. He knows what's going on. And that's a very simple, it's an easy thing to do. You can program it right into your into most email apps just to send you a reminder to, hey, check on client X. And that you would be surprised how often that will lift someone's spirits, let them know that you're working on your case and really that you're on their side.
Yeah, because I mean, it's the biggest thing happening in their lives at the moment, more than likely. And
Absolutely.
if they're not getting communication from their attorney, then the stress that could cause them will make things worse.
Absolutely. I could not agree more. And to be honest, if you talk to any person who has sat on the ethics board for each county has their own, the state has their own, the biggest complaint that comes from clients against attorneys is failure to communicate.
Yeah.
And it is the easiest thing to send a simple email and have a simple reminder. And you save yourself a headache and you help that client out who now knows that you're on their side, knows that you care about their case.
Yeah, and we have so many ways to communicate these days. It's hard to find excuses not to, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
You talked about the emotional aspect of things. People are emotionally charged when they come into your office, when they call, when they see you guys. There's also an anger a lot of times is one of those emotions that people feel, obviously, with divorces. When people come to you and they're real fired up and they're real angry, how do you work to kind of calm them down and get them focused on the next months to year ahead and to get this process completed?
That's a little more complicated because a lot of it you can diffuse a lot of that just by listening, and simply by listening. You don't even have to always agree with what they're angry about, or that this is the biggest portion or the biggest reason to be upset in their case. But once again, if you just listen and let them spew it all out, and you're just nodding and agreeing and acknowledging that you're hearing what they say. And then once it's out, you can circle back. You can say, okay, you were upset about this. Well, let's talk about this. What upsets you about this specific situation? And then you explain to them how that fits into, for example, their divorce, how this fits into their divorce. So you can explain to them how this may affect the divorce, either property or spousal support or assets and debts. And as you begin to explain it, the more they talk about it, and this is not always the first meeting, this is not always a one-time meeting, but the more you are able to talk about it and kind of blend it in with the rest of the divorce, the more diffused it becomes, the less triggering it is as you're going through it. And pretty soon, within, how everyone's different. So we'll just say within a matter of months, then they're able to, I would say, emotionally, intelligently speak about it,
right,
without allowing that to overtake their common sense or to overtake the emotion at the time.
Yeah, that makes sense for sure. So just talking about the podcast here, what can listeners expect from future episodes? What kind of topics will you plan on covering to help them prepare and protect themselves?
So really, this started out as just wanting to go over, just basic questions that everybody has. It's almost like, when you go to a website and you have, oh, hey, here's our general questions, or here's, if you have questions, the answers and question page, but there's really nothing that's going to be off limits to talk about. So, starting out with general questions, and then you get into specific things, because a general question will always lead you in to a very specific thing. And the thing about divorce and family law is it's very case specific. So even the general questions will only get you in the door. It's the details that are always going to matter. So hopefully we'll get some feedback, and there'll be detailed questions that someone may have, and hopefully we can put that on one of the episodes, and that person can get an answer to a detailed question they have. Now, keeping in mind those details are always, it's not a detail on an island. They always tie into the bigger case. So sometimes you gotta be careful on how you answer a very detailed question without knowing the rest of the surrounding circumstances. But we'll go over all that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like to just to kind of set the stage for the show that we're going to do here, that everybody's case is specific. We're going to be talking about various things. Doesn't mean it always applies exactly to everybody, but it's still good information to be armed with when you're prepping or going through a divorce.
Absolutely. At the very least, if it's not with our office, if they're represented by someone else, it gives them it gives them a question to have.
So if someone's listening today and they're starting to think, I guess I should say, about a separation, what's the first piece of advice that you would give them?
I would say at least have a generalized plan. It's so overwhelming, and there's so much that's going to come out at you once you make that decision to make that move. So you want to have a generalized plan. You want to know, at the very least, you want to know what assets you have: property, vehicles, bank accounts. You want to know the debts. You want to know the credit cards that are out there. A very easy way to begin that plan and to see what, for example, debts. A very super simple way. Go pull a credit report. It will list every debt you have. And the good thing about it is, a lot of times, especially with property or vehicles, they're listed as a debt, but it tells you what other assets you may have. Begin by marking all that down, because that's one of the first things we're going to ask you when you come into our office. Once we get down to the details, is we need to know about houses and property and vehicles. We need to know, we refer to them as toys, but campers and all these things that people collect
ATVs and like all that. Yeah.
All these things they collect over a series of years. And it's surprising, and it's easy to understand, but yet surprising that sometimes people have no idea what they fully have.
Years and years of collecting stuff, you just kind of forget what's what. And getting that plan in place and understanding the starting point will help a lot.
Absolutely. It helps ease, and it also gives that person some relief from the anxiety, because then at least once again, I found that it comes back to just having something tactile in your hand. Okay, this is what I have right now. And then you're able to communicate about it, and that can relieve a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety.
Well, there's a lot of stuff that we're going to have to talk about. So it was really nice getting to know you, Jeff, and I'm sure the audience agrees that, this is important. It's important stuff, and it's going to be great being able to pick your brain and get your knowledge out there for anyone who needs it. Well, thanks for joining us for today's episode of From Separation to Settlement. If you found this conversation helpful and you're excited about future episodes, please be sure to subscribe, leave us a review, share the show with someone who might need some support. And for more resources or to connect with Jeff and the Kroener Hale Law Firm, visit kroenerlaw.com. And remember, every journey starts with one step, and you don't have to take it alone. Jeff, so great chatting with you. Thanks for your time. Looking forward to more episodes.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.